not casting shade on anyone, but if we just stop at, I live with my PTSD, I've got my dog, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I think we're missing the point. There's always exceptions to the rule. There's always people that just are never going to be able to get past that. But I think most people, there is the true hope of post-traumatic growth, the 2.0 version of yourself that you'll look in the mirror and you'll be so damn proud that you did the work.
Welcome to episode number 61 of the First Responder Wellness Podcast. This is a special episode that you will not want to miss 1 minute of my conversation with my guest today. So my name is Conrad Weaver. I'm so glad you've joined us today. And my guest is James Geering. James spent 14 years as a firefighter and paramedic, working on both the East and West Coast of the USA. He was born and raised in England and moved to America in 2002, and you'll probably pick up a little bit of his British accent that still lingers. James is an exercise physiology graduate and a lifelong athlete. He is most well known as the host of the very popular Behind the Shield podcast, which has over 950 episodes with more than 6 million downloads to date. Wow, that's amazing. Behind the Shield is the most downloaded firefighter wellness podcast on the planet. James is also the author of 2 books, One More Light and his brand new book, Kinder. And he is my guest today. Our conversation goes deep, and you'll want to be sure to listen to the entire show as he has some really challenging messages for firefighter and really first responder leaders at the end of the show. So please stay tuned. Just a reminder that I'm here every Wednesday with a brand new podcast episode. So be sure to subscribe so that you won't miss an episode. And if the show hits a nerve with you, or it really helps you, share it with your friends and family. Thanks so much for listening. And now here's my conversation with the one and only James Geering. Well, James, welcome to the First Responder Wellness Podcast. So glad we could finally connect.
Thank you so much. I know, as we said before we hit record, we spoke a long time ago. I think you just began even formulating the concept of your film. So I'm excited to speak to you now.
That was a long time ago. And it seems now, that was like just out of COVID or before COVID. I don't remember. But so a lot of things have happened since then. But I know you've been a busy guy. So for the audience who may not exactly know who you are, there's probably 2 people that in the world. Tell us who you are and kind of your story of origin.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more than 2 people that don't know who I am. I meet them every day, and it's a good thing. My podcast is called Behind the Shield for a reason. I don't want to be the face of something. But no, I grew up on a farm in England, English farm boy. Very long story, very short. When I was young, I wanted to be a firefighter. A medical annual physical at my school told me that I was colorblind and I could never be a pilot, a firefighter, or anything like that. So fumbled my way around for a few years, actually fell into stunt work. So I became a stuntman. And that ironically took me to living in the States, where at way too old, I finally had a realization that I'm not colorblind, that I'm color deficient, massive difference. And so challenged the test here in America, was, no problem at all. It's just shades that I don't see as well. That's it. And then entered the fire service in Florida. So I trained in Orlando, Hialeah, which is a suburb of Miami, was my first one. My wife at the time was in entertainment as well. So she wanted to kind of, chase the stardom a little bit. So we ended up going west, worked in California for a few years. I was on a truck company in Anaheim Fire, Tillerman, the best seat in the fire service, hands down. And then we had a little boy, moved back to the East Coast, and I ended up working around the Orlando area for the last 10 years of my career.
So little sidebar here, did you know Matty Fiorenza?
Yes, so that's how Matty and I met years and years ago. Yeah, he was hired. I think he was only on, I don't want to misspeak. So I think I don't even know if it was 3 years before me. I think it was even less than that. Okay. So he was kind of one of the classes right ahead of me. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just curious, being in the movie business, doing documentaries, I'm interested in your stunt work. What have you been in any films, any major films or anything that we know?
So there's an irony. Because I have played firefighters as really a glorified extra. I was in the World Trade Center movie, and when I say I was in it, I was a little silhouette in the background of one or two. I have no idea if it was me or not, but but then I did some as an actor, and I am an awful actor. So I did the History Channel, a pirate TV, because it's called the Real Pirates of the Caribbean, or the True Pirates of the Caribbean. I've forgotten now, but anyway, I mean, just awful. I mean, it was so much fun, but it was mainly Americans. Their British accents were horrendous. It was just, but it was fun. Like, we were, sailing around on a pirate ship and shooting cannons and stuff. But so yeah, the stunt work where I don't have lines is where I thrive. When I have to speak, it's just, we were saying before we hit record, I'm narrating the audiobook now. It's a little different because it's something I've written, so I understand it and I'm in it. But yeah, when the stunt world is completely different than the acting world, so I've always liked being kind of behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. So what was that motivation for you to go into the fire service? What was the draw there?
It sounds cliche, but it's true. I think with most of us, truly just wanting to make the world a little better. When people are having their worst day, you want to be there. You're not wishing for someone to have their worst day, but they are going to. It is life. And so, you want to be one of those well-trained responders that shows up. And whether it's something as simple as just picking an elderly person off the floor and cleaning them up and giving them a change of clothes and restoring their dignity, or, entering a burning building looking for someone, there's a certain group of people that's just burning in their heart. And I think that was obviously there when I was very young, when I was dreaming of becoming a firefighter. Ironically, I wanted to be a doctor too. And it was my academia that, brought that to a halt. But years later, I realized it wasn't a doctor. It was a paramedic that I wanted to be. So the beautiful thing about the American fire service is you can do those two together, which I think is phenomenal. I mean, such a jack of all trades. So, yeah, but I mean, it's truly that. It's wanting to make a difference. And I think a lot of us are empaths. We feel the pain and the suffering of others, and we want to try and do something about it.
I kind of relate to that in several ways. One, I remember growing up, I wanted to be a doctor, and that was just, I wanted to be an emergency room, surgeon. And I actually I was the first one in my family to go to college, and because that was the path I was on. And what I didn't realize, I had such a bad math and science background that I was put in some remedial chemistry class, in college, that nurses were taking. No shade on nurses, but it wasn't, anything that was going to get me into medical school. And finally, I was making like C's and D's in chemistry and biology. And my professor was like, you might want to think about a different route.
Yeah.
So I ended up in psychology, but I still wanted to help. I still wanted to help people. That's why I went into psychology. And ironically, my life takes a windy path as it does. And, and now kind of come full circle. I'm kind of known as a PTSD guy, for first responders. And so I can kind of lean back into that degree in psychology a little bit. So
it's interesting. I talk about this story quite a bit on the podcast because it's so pertinent. I think Steve Jobs didn't actually take a major in college. He just took classes that interested him. And one was calligraphy. And, at the moment, I'm sure he just found it interesting. We'll fast forward a few years. They're the first, Apple's the first computer that has fonts. So when you look at the rigid, arguably kind of insane way that we do higher education, how many good doctors and, all these other professions failed out because they were just really bad at maths, and the calculus and all that stuff, they just couldn't get past it. Now, I'm not saying that I would have been a good doctor, but that was the barrier. It was the maths portion that you are not going to use in emergency medicine, for example.
Yeah, it is interesting that the way we do education, you pick a thing and that's what you focus on. And, many of us, especially those of us who are creatives, we kind of think differently. We try different things. I mean, I'm a creative. I'm a digital creative. I do photography. I do video. I do podcasting. I play a guitar. I used to sing. I don't sing much anymore. But why don't we just choose what we like? Like Steve Jobs, I think that's a great example of that. Now, I do want a doctor or a lawyer to really get the training that they need for that particular profession. I want my surgeon to be well trained to that's going to cut on me. But I think it's kind of messed up in our system. And I know Malcolm Gladwell and his podcast, his books that I've read, he kind of thinks the same way too, that our education system is really messed up. But anyway, we diverge from our subject matter here. So why do you think that so many first responders have that innate desire to be of service?
It's not solely this, but a large part of it, when you dive into the lives of a first responder, early lives, and this is something that I kind of fell into. I've had over 1,000 interviews now, and I always start at the beginning of someone's story. And it was really Jake Clark, who's the founder of Save a Warrior, that opened my eyes to the impact of childhood trauma or struggles, when we're young, on what manifests when we're in uniform, which explains why some of these young men and women have only got a few months a year on the job, and we lose them. So that's the first part. I think a lot of us have that, and that I want to preface, that can be an absolute superpower. The difference is if you have suppressed it, if you've pushed it down, if you've compartmentalized it, that then becomes a fracture in your foundation. But it's still a drive. I don't want someone else to feel the suffering that I felt. I want to be the protector. I want to be the solution. I want to build an armor. I want to be a big, strong police officer, firefighter. But if you actually find, you see that thing in yourself and you do the work, that absolutely becomes resilience. We throw that word around all the time. I think resilience are struggles that we've worked through, that we've overcome. Now these scars, kind of like the gold glue on the Japanese pottery analogy, now it really is a strength, and we can be a beacon of hope for others, and we can empathize with people. I mean, there's a lot of people in uniform that grew up in the hood, and now they're able to interact with those people now, and they're wearing a uniform and inspiring young people to be able to do the same thing. Steve O'Michelle, one of my friends, is one of them. So that, I think, is a big part of it. So that can absolutely, there's so much positive to that, but it also really then begs the question, why are we not giving our first responders the tools that they need from their mental health, counseling, whatever it is, at the front door, understanding that a lot of us are carrying things? Because from what Jake said, you've got the, oh my God, I've lost the acronym now, the childhood trauma.
Oh, ACEs?
ACEs, thank you, the ACEs score. 0, is it 1 to 10? On average, a lot of first responders and military are 6 on the ACEs score. A lot of incarcerated men and women are 6 on the ACEs score. And how many times do you hear people say it was either prison or the military? So a lot of us have that. I mean, we just do. So I think it's such an important conversation to understand that, but really have that again, understanding that if you work through those, that is a better first responder. So if we talk about it at the front door and then keep that conversation going, we're not only going to save lives from a suicide point of view, we're going to create better firefighters overall.
So was that part of your story?
I mean, it's funny because I don't look back at that and go, I had a traumatic childhood, but there were absolutely traumas. I mean, I wrote about it in my first book. When I was 4 years old, we were in a house fire. My granddad made chips, French fries. And basically we were watching a cartoon. So we asked if we could just, watch a few more minutes before we sat down and ate. So he thought he turned down the old chip pan, basically a saucepan full of oil, and he turned it up by a mistake. Caught the kitchen, the dining room on fire, fully involved, and it broke through the glass door into the living room. That's where we were sitting. So this was a legit, we almost died structure fire. My sister tried to get us out. The door wouldn't open the first time. My granddad didn't hear. He was kind of getting deaf at this point. And she ran upstairs, tried to phone my parents, and this is pre-cell phone. This is literally rotary phone times. So no answer. She came down and was able to jar the door open the second time. So by this time, we came out, we were black with soot. So that was at 4 years old. And I'd forgotten about that for years and years and years till I started writing One More Light. And I was like, oh, that maybe explains one of the reasons why I wanted to be a firefighter. It can send you
I was going to ask that
other
question. Is that the kind of the inspiration for you to...
I think so. But it's interesting because I could either have been terrified of fire. I absolutely love fire, not in an arsonist way, but close. Like if I smell, a wildland fire or something, I love that smell, fire in a fireplace. So I was, enamored with fire. It sent me towards it. And there was some other thing, another near-death thing where a massive wall almost killed us in a parking lot. There's a guy, I can see him now, a guy digging in a raised garden. And then there was this crack and all these immense stones just tumbled like Jenga. All the cars next to us were flattened down to like 2 feet. And we just literally just pulled away. We were picked up by the wave of rocks. So that, there are things, my parents divorced, but what is, I think, a really interesting point, and I talk about this a lot, unlike Matty, for example, Fiorenza, I never found myself in the darkest of dark places. I was low. I was a single dad. I divorced, his mother, who I'd traveled to California and back with. And that was a rough time, on my own, different country now, no one to lean on during that whole thing. But what I think the only difference between me and all the other people that either we've lost or that were there is equally and opposite to all these traumatic events. I was a son. I grew up on a farm. So I had animals, I had nature, I had fresh air, I had dirt in my nails, all the things that we know are healing. I was one of 5 kids. So there was community, even if we were like feral children running around. We healed animals. So there was a healing element. There was the animals themselves, so the animal therapy element. And then the people that came through the farm, anywhere from gypsies through to extended royal family, you were just exposed to all these different people, and you learned, okay, there's either good people or bad people. It doesn't matter how wealthy they are or where they sleep at night. And then there was a kitchen table that we always ate around as a family. So all the things that I see now that work in a fire station, I had just by a genetic lottery. So this is an important thing is, that guy's weak. No, that guy was just born with this situation and this home environment, and this guy or girl was born with this one. So when you can identify the bad and the good, you can then start picking out what will work, what will help get this person out of that hole and back on their feet again. So the absence of any true, like deeply suicidal or addiction elements in my life is purely because of my environment, which goes to show that you can make an environment toxic and, people more likely to take their own lives, or you can create the opposite. It takes a village, that community. And we saw it in COVID. When you fracture community, mental health went in the toilet. When you pull people together, 9/12, a perfect example, it's the opposite.
I love that idea of taking that pain from the past or that trauma from the past and using it as a stepping stone to do what you can do now to make a difference in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why we're all in uniform. This is why we sought it. But, that you've got to understand all the things that are negative, organizational betrayal. How many departments at the moment are toxic, especially in law enforcement? The sleep deprivation thing, which I'm sure we'll get to, is the absolute immense herd of elephants in the room, not just one. So there's all these elements too. So if we can figure out what's traumatic and we can figure out what's healing, you can start adjusting the equation and take that person who is struggling and turn them into someone who's thriving. I truly believe if we stop at stigma in this conversation and, your identity has become, and I've said this a lot, this is not casting shade on anyone, but if we just stop at, I live with my PTSD, I've got my dog, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I think we're missing the point. There's always exceptions to the rule. There's always people that just are never going to be able to get past that. But I think most people, there is the true hope of post-traumatic growth, the 2.0 version of yourself that you'll look in the mirror and you'll be so damn proud that you did the work.
Do you think some people are comfortable in their PTSD and the mess, and it's difficult to step outside of that or to see themselves without that?
I think, firstly, giving ourselves permission to be better. I'm going to give you a perfect example. Like I, to this day, still struggle with the idea of having to make money while I do this free podcast, but I have to. In fact, I'm paying for it right now, actually, as we speak, this last couple of months. But, because again, you just give. It's for others. But without that self-care, it's that whole kind of cliche, plain oxygen mask analogy. Until you help yourself, you can't help other people. The other danger, I think, and this is an American problem more so, is there's also a psychology of beginning to identify with your disorder, with your struggle, because we see it as paramedics all the time. Well, I've got, whatever. Only 1 in 10,000 people have it, but they're morbidly obese. And it's like, do you really? Or have you just not actually put in the work to get yourself at a healthy weight? And maybe some of these inflammatory or autoimmune things are going to go away. So I think the danger, I think, in some of these people is a psychology of, this is now who I am. I'm the PTSD guy, whatever it is. And I think you're doing yourself a disservice by not carrying on. They say, Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, carry on. Right. I think that's what we need to do. Don't stop there and be like, I'm living with it now. I know it's not going to work for everyone, but I think there's a large portion of people that we can get all the way through to the other side. Because when you get to the other side, now you become a beacon of hope for other people. And we've heard this with so many people. Matty's obviously talked about it. Once you have come out, people are like, hey, I'm actually going through some stuff too. Can you tell me how you did it? So if you truly want to help people, help yourself first, and then that in turn will help people.
Yeah. I bring that up because I had a conversation recently with someone, and they're in that place where they have the dog, they're in their mess, so to speak. And so I connected them to a resource that could potentially help them move forward. And, oh yeah, I'm excited about, I'll text him back. I'll do things. Crickets, nothing. It's like, do you really want to get help? Or is that a barrier? Is that a fear that you're facing, that to really having to face those demons?
I think that's the problem with the, hey bro, if you're struggling, call me mentality. When they're struggling, they're not calling anyone. You have to physically put yourself in front of them. And it's hard because, sometimes there's people I know that have become the face, that shoulder, and everyone's calling them, and they don't have the capacity to help everyone. Each one of us it's a buddy system. Who's your nearest and dearest? Be there for them. I've had people where, I've literally stood on their front doorstep. They were drunk as a skunk. And I told them, all right, I'm coming tomorrow morning, and then we're going to have this conversation, and then go back the next day. That is, I think, the big thing. So with these resources and with the help, yes, they have to be able to want to help. They have to be able to make this the first step. But if their environment is chaos, how much can you mitigate that to make it easier for them to make the first step? Because right now, imagine, you're in the perfect storm and you're hanging on to a gallon of milk in the middle of the ocean. You need someone to get the boat close, to throw a lifeline, and then they're going to have to still climb. But I think more often than not, we need to do a lot more than we think we do to get these people to where they really need help. We need to follow up. And the same guy I was talking about, I text him nothing. After I had stood there in his house, and then he'd actually gone through his own crucible, and he's incredible. He's been sober for years. He runs a CrossFit workout with people that are sober as well now, or trying to get sober. But he said, just know, I read every one of your texts and they helped. So if you're not the one struggling, we really have to band together and keep pushing, not pushing to the point where you're going to make them worse, but keep showing them that they are there, because the moment they have that window of strength, that's when you're going to save them.
I think that's something that was really made real to me when our friend Nicole passed last year. She's the dispatcher in my film, was doing well, we thought. And then August of last year, she took her own life. And it just reminded me of those messages that we can send in a quick text. Those matter. Those matter so much. And there's times when I have other people in my life when I know they're struggling, and I send them some encouraging text, and I don't hear back from them. But so on one side, it's frustrating, but on the other side, I know that they're probably reading it, because I get the little delivered thing on the text, so I know that it at least shows up. They're probably looking at their phone. So how important is that to keep on keeping on doing that?
I think that is important. Like there's someone that I'm friends with that has actually been on the show who's gone through his own stuff, and I've texted and called, and it's been nothing for months now. But I'm still going to text, I'm still going to call. Like, he's other side of the country, so I can't physically put myself in front of him. But again, no, just letting them know I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here. I think that's important. The other thing, talking about Nicole and all the other people that we've lost, that we failed, is I don't think the messaging is out there to show people how vast the toolbox actually is for them to get help. For example, psychedelics for so many people are working. I've got firefighter friends who are still here today because of ayahuasca, for example. I know I've got found myself kind of immersed in the Navy SEAL community through the podcast. So many of them that I began, so you've got that whole thing, but we've got this insane prohibition, element where, for example, as I highlight, the MDMA, which is another incredible drug for mental health and PTSD, was the FDA refused to allow it to be used for MDMA-led counseling or therapy, psychotherapy. But it's the same MDMA that approved OxyContin, that is really the root cause of the opioid crisis that we have. So this is people got to understand, this is the environment that we're in. It's completely backwards. But there are places, especially in the US, because of loopholes, where churches can offer it as a sacrament, and you can get that kind of, it's still kind of underground, but not that it's illicit. It's just no one's talking about it publicly. But would that have saved Nicole? Would that have saved so many of these other people that they went to a counselor? And in my second book, there's a chapter of, that details this. They finally had the courage to say, I need some help. They went through EAP. They were sent to some awful counselor that had no idea how to deal with first responders. They walked out going, well, I must be broken. They couldn't help me. And then they end it. So the other part of the conversation, if we're going to talk about hope, is understanding there are so many things. And if one or two things haven't worked, do not give up. It just means you haven't found the right one yet. Ask other people. And it might even be talk therapy. You might simply have the wrong human being in front of you.
Sure. Yeah, I've heard that before where, the therapist was horrible. They were crying, after they heard my story. Move on to the next one. Find someone else. There's someone out there for you that can be the right person to guide you to a better life.
100%.
Yeah. So what's worked for you?
Work? Like, what do I do now?
No, what's worked for you to stay healthy, to get yourself to a good place?
Murder yoga is definitely one of them. Jiu-jitsu. Yeah, I literally had this yesterday. We had nothing crazy, but my wife's in med school. So as you can imagine, in America, med school just financially destroys a household. So she's almost done now. So we're at the tipping point. So yesterday I made myself go to jiu-jitsu. I felt like $1 million the other end of it. Had some great roles, great community, another physical offload. And in the afternoon, my other one is Iron Legion's my gym. It was CrossFit. Now we do a thing called Wolf Brigade. But again, another hour of exercise, interacting with community, another tribe. So really it's that. And when it comes to the therapy side, I always tell people, this isn't me dismissing. I do these conversations, just, me recording 3 times a week. So I am constantly talking about it, and I have no problem, sharing a story that's related to what the person's talking about that might be deep and dark on my side, because truly you've become an open book. So that helps immensely. I have a German Shepherd who's lying outside the door now. So I've got a canine, but I haven't got a register or anything. She's just a dog, but she's absolutely my therapy. I walk her and run her twice a day, usually about 4 miles total, leave my phone at home when I do that. So yeah, and then pouring myself into, my son, my wife, my bonus boy, my stepson. So that really, it's kind of, again, back to that farmhouse, that community, that healing, that nature, all the things that I know work. So that has served me well. But I also I meditate, not as much as I should, but that works incredibly well. And then there's another technology called Nucalm, Nucalm. Absolutely amazing. You put on a sleep mask and lie somewhere comfortable, put on headphones, and it what you're listening to is music. So people think, oh, it's those neuroacoustic beats, but this is the only one with this actual technology in it. Beneath the music are these insane kind of, reverberations. And it was a neuroscientist, supposedly one of the most intelligent people we've ever had on the planet, that figured out the frequency that the brain was at in different stress states and flow states. And then another 10 years, he figured out how to manipulate it. And it was being used by Navy SEALs and NASA and all these people that could afford it. And it was a big machine. Well, now phones have just come so far. It's an app on the phone. And they have all these different ones, but there's one called Power Nap, 20 minutes. You lie there and you come out feeling like you've done a 90-minute sleep. It's incredible. And it down regulates the nervous system. And the whole focus of that was PTSD, was mental health. But one of the applications for the fire service or law enforcement or corrections is if you can be in a place that you still feel safe, so either in a bunk room or, if you're a police officer, if you're behind the compound, whatever it is, where you feel comfortable putting on a mask, and you can do that for 20 minutes before you go home, that will not only down regulate you from hypersensitive law enforcement officer back to mother, father, whatever you're going to be when you walk through the door, but also it'll give you the equivalent of about, one sleep cycle, 90 minutes sleep. So now you're safer to drive home as well. So that is another incredible thing. And I'll normally do that almost every single day. About lunchtime, when you get that kind of slump, rather than make coffee, I'll do that. And that serves me extremely well too. So as we said, toolbox, massive toolbox. Yeah. And I would like to do the MDMA. I'm probably going to do that with one of my friends early next year. Because I did that recreationally, had a blast, by the way. But, and this was a long time before I was a firefighter. But secondary, though, it really does open up. It's called the love drug. I remember, just not going on a tangent, there was a local fighter when I was growing up, real hard nut. And I remember going clubbing one day and seeing him, and he had his shirt off and he was hugging everyone. I'm like, what's going on? It was only years later I realized he was on ecstasy. So what it does is it just drops all those walls. So if you do it with someone who can lead you through the counseling session, now you can access some of these things that were maybe hidden. So some of the other ayahuasca and that, it can be quite, there's purging and it can be quite aggressive. For me, I just would love to explore and be like, all right, is there anything in there that I haven't seen? Just kind of a torch for the dark room, just to make sure I'm not missing something that's kind of buried. But so I'm, it's a vast spectrum of tools, but none of them are, I have to do this today. They're all just kind of organic things that I've woven into my daily routine, and they help immensely.
So what are we going to do about the problem of sleep within the first responder community? I mean, it's a ubiquitous problem that is just doesn't seem like there's, many great answers. For example, my neighbor he's a deputy with the sheriff's department. I think he's a corporal, and he works swing shifts. He works days one week, evenings the next week, and nights the next week. And he says, I just never sleep well at all.
No.
And which is a terrible system for this agency to have. They actually did a study and they came back, and many of the officers were like, yeah, I would love to go on fixed shifts. And they said, no, we're going to keep it as it is.
Welcome to the first responder professions. As a perfect example here, my local fire department, we just went to what they call, it's kind of like a think tank. There's an organization called IHMC, which from human performance and robotics are kind of like the top one in America. So again, NASA, DARPA, the SEALs, all Delta, they're all using these guys, and they'll go to them and say, "Hey, NASA, the tiles came off the shuttle. We can't figure out what's going on, or our astronauts are losing bone density, whatever it is." And they will get all the appropriate experts and they'll hash it out for X amount of days or weeks, and then they'll come up with solutions. Well, a local business person, after we had 2 suicides in the county here, actually put the money up with the hospital and funded this for first responder suicide. We all went there. I was dogmatic in making sure we were talking about the shifts, because we'll get to that is a solution. That is the solution for a lot of this. They presented at the end of the weekend. They were like, yep, this new shift, the 2472, is number 1 on the things that you need to go to. And they were like, yeah, we're just not. So someone else paid for them. They'd lost 2 firefighters, either side of about 30 years old, within 12 weeks of each other. and you're going to be like, yeah, we're just not going to do anything. So the answer is absolutely based in the principle, why do firefighters, I'm going to stay with the fire service, why do firefighters work 56 hours a week? And you got to take a step back and go, the people that tell you you can't change your work week, they work 40 hours a week. The administrators, all the people that work in offices, 40 hours a week. So this is where we've really lost it. We've told ourselves a fairy tale. We told our neighbors we have this amazing shift and we're off all the time. And you look at it and it's absolute rubbish. Like, to use the 24-48 analogy, we said we work 1 day on, 2 days off. Now we don't. No civilian would just consider a 24-hour shift as a day's work. That's 3 8-hour days crammed together. Right. So you work 3 days on, 1 day off. So that's not 10 days a month, that's 30 days a month. So, and then you add in the recruitment crisis. Now you've got mandatory overtime. Every week that a firefighter is told you cannot go home, that's an 80-hour work week, 80, twice the work week of your barista or the person at the pub, your grocery store, your accountant. So it is understanding that first is how we start debunking and get this proactive change. What is beautiful, I've been talking about this for 8 years now, but the dominoes have started to fall in Florida. There was one department, Boynton Beach, their chief, Hugh Bruder, is incredible, real leader, and they went to 24/72. So all you're doing is putting an extra 24 hours between the shifts, but that's a 42-hour work week. So again, no one can say, oh, that's not fair. It's still more than you work, civilian. And we wake up, from a dead sleep and go get your kid out of a burning building. And the rest is kind of important. So what has happened now, though, is storytelling. For me, the stopping our people dying from mental health and physical health issues is my absolute paramount. But also, there's a massive financial savings. People, how can we afford to hire more firefighters? Well, if you look at the overtime rate at the moment, I'll give you an example. The same county where I live, they had 176,000 hours of overtime. So if we kind of round up to 200, that basically is almost $6 million just in overtime because of all these vacancies. They lose almost $20,000 for every recruit that they hire that 3, 4, 5 years leaves and goes to a different department. So now you're talking about another, if there's, say, 100 recruits, which they lose way more than that, again, now that's another 2 million. Then you look at the lawsuits from us being too rough, pushing the wrong meds, hitting someone at an intersection. I mean, now you're talking millions and millions. The workman's comp claims, because we do break millions and millions. So this is what's crazy, is the money is being spent and wasted downstream, like a blooming, like Helene, just flooding everywhere. If we actually take that money and we front load it, hire another shift, then all of a sudden those holes are, they're full. Now you've got a much happier, healthier workforce, and occasional overtime. It will still always come wildland season, but also in California, for example, now you've got a fourth shift. So when people do deploy on strike teams, you've got another entire group of people to kind of plug those holes then. But then people say as well, but we can't even hire people now. We're in a recruitment crisis. Why are we in a recruitment crisis? When I got hired, when Matty got hired, we were testing against thousands of people. Same job, fire, EMS, rope rescue, brush fires, the job hasn't changed. It's the working conditions have got worse and worse, and the calls have gone more and more. And what's happened is people are realizing now, people are dying in droves from this. So these young people are looking at this going, okay, so 56 hours a week. So that makes that salary not so great, because I've got to work another 16 hours more than the cops to get the same amount. You've got divorces, suicides, overdose, everyone's testosterone's in the toilet, all the things. These young people, they take their health very seriously. So they're looking at this and going, this doesn't look good. I want to be home with my family when I'm supposed to be home. So the way that you attract people back in, the way you change this recruitment crisis, is you show the young firefighters, hey, we fix what's broken. We're going to invest in you. We're going to give you more rest and recovery. We're going to put fitness standards back where they should be. We're going to hold you to a high bar, but you're going to be a proud member of an incredible fire department. So that's just a kind of real Cliff Notes version, but they're just the courage to change, because all you're doing is taking that money you're losing and investing in your people. And if you look at the progressive corporations, Virgin, Google, they do exactly that. You know, they can work flexible hours. They have gyms in their HQs. They serve, you know, free, clean food in their cafeterias. They understand that a healthy workforce is a healthy customer. So we, the fire service, have to get to that same mind state.
And it's the same way. I've been talking about this for a while. And whenever we do our screenings, I always kind of bring this up. I said, if you buy a $150,000 Mercedes, you know, you invested all your money, you know, into this car, man, it's a beauty. You're going to do everything you can to keep that thing healthy. You're going to spend money to keep it healthy. You're going to change the oil every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. You're going to make sure everything's working, because if that thing breaks down, it's going to be an expensive repair bill. It's the same thing with our first responder agencies. You know, you're hiring and you're buying, quote unquote, these expensive pieces of humans, you know, humans who you're investing a lot of money into. Why not take care of them up front?
Yeah. I mean, it's just that. It
makes sense.
Yeah. I had Tulsi Gabbard on the show a while ago, and everything I was talking to her about was that whole thing of the false economy. Like, for example, I come from a country that when I was young, the NHS was incredible because it was funded and run the way it was supposed to. Now, I just learned this recently. What happened was American companies kind of forced their way in, and it's become more and more like the US model. And when you look at the American health, 70% of our people are either obese or overweight, 40+% are obese. Clearly, the way we do it does not work. So no one should be modeling the American system. But, you know, when you have a tax-based healthcare system, then your whole kind of momentum is to make British people as healthy as possible. So you use as little of the taxpayers' money. It's the same with this. If you invest in your people, you know, not only are workman's comp claims and medical disabilities and line of duty deaths going to come down, but also your premiums are going to come down. Oh, these firefighters aren't using us as much. Okay, we can offer you at a lower rate now, you know? So it's this you know, the self-licking ice cream, as they say. That once you start working towards the health of your people, not only are you going to be doing, you know, from an ethical human point of view, you're going to be making it better for them and their families, but also you're going to be saving your counties and cities money, because instead of money fixing broken firefighters, it can go into staffing rigs and opening fire stations and putting gyms in fire stations and hiring mental health professionals to be within the department, and all these things that are only then going to make our delivery of service even better.
So I'm curious, the station in Boynton Beach, you know, what are the results there of them going from a 24/72?
So everything that we thought, now it's still early-ish, and this is what's funny. When one of the pushbacks I had early on was, even to this day, oh, can you send me the studies? Can you send me the data? There aren't any, because the fire service hasn't cared enough, and that disgusts me. It really does. I can show you 100 studies on a smoothbore nozzle versus a fog nozzle, which is, I've used both and the fire always goes out. So, you know, unless you're on a high-rise evolution, for me personally, you know, they're both fine. So if you took all that money you spent on studying nozzles and you put it into this, we would have a whole load of information. The one study that everyone ran with, and I had the guy who did this study, was the 4896, which is even more insane than the way we work now. It was the way the department he did it on was a department close to him. Joel Billings is his name. And again, super nice guy. He was a volunteer firefighter who self-proclaimed had never worked overnight at a volunteer station. And then the department he studied ran, and like, this is his words, less than one call a night.
Oh, wow.
Which is no department I know of.
Yeah.
I've you know, every department I've worked for, we've always run 3, 4, 5 a night, every night, you know. So what people did is they thought, oh, this is healthier, and they ran with it. Well, the only real element that he found was even healthier was that second of the 48 hours, that second day, they didn't have to wake up at 5 a.m. like they did the night before to go from home to the station. Well, that can be remedied by simply making the firefighter start time 11 a.m., 12 noon. You know, so now you've added that advantage for $0 without killing your people for 48 hours. So this is what's sad is that, when it comes to the studies, they haven't been done. And the one that was done, they took it completely out of context. And it's just like running with it. Oh, cigarette companies funded the study and apparently cigarettes are great. What they say, little knowledge is a dangerous thing. So what will happen with Boynton, with Gainesville, with Pasco, with Miramar, with Palm Beach County, with all these ones that are going to it, Destin, is a few years from now, we're really going to start having data. But right now it's more observational. But all of those have seen a massive uptick in recruitment because people are excited again. They understand the value of that. We all know how we feel. And then, like I've said a million times, if the way we did it was working, we wouldn't have a crisis. You wouldn't have a film. I wouldn't have a podcast. Everyone would just be living their best life as firefighters. But it's the polar opposite. We're literally facing the collapse of the American fire service if we don't fix this. So, but yeah, Boynton, happier, healthier, people banging on their doors to work for them, all the things that we knew. And then, it's a year and a half in, but obviously they're already anticipating all the wasted money coming down. The overtime's obviously gone away because they're fully staffed. And then, Gainesville, Gainesville is having more overtime at the moment because they're filling the spots as they're recruiting and training the young people. Promoting people to the ranks to fill those higher up rank positions takes a little bit longer. So it's a transition that will take a few years, but I guarantee you 5-10 years from now, we're going to look back and go, we have saved these large departments, hundreds of millions of dollars, and we have a healthier, happier workforce. So we're seeing the beginnings of it, but sadly it's so new. There isn't like a longitudinal study of it yet, but I mean, you can look at it the other way around. We've got a longitudinal study, 60, 70 years of just destroying our first responders. We know the results of that. So one could hypothesize the opposite of that would be, the repair of all those issues that we're seeing.
Wow, there's a lot of work to do. And there's a lot of people that need to hear this and really understand this. I did an interview with a fire captain out of Little Elm, Texas, and I don't know where they are with the scheduling, but I know what he did is he went to the city and said, "Hey, I want to line item in the budget for mental health and wellness. We want to cover 100% of all our firefighters and their families with mental health services." And the city said, "Okay, sure, let's try it." Exactly what you said. Recruitment went up. They had people transferring from better paying jobs coming to this place, wanting to work for them because they know they're going to be taken care of.
Yep. I mean, it matters. What was it someone was saying? I was talking to a guy, and he's actually on one of the barrier islands in, I think it was South Carolina, North Carolina, right there. And they're an interesting dynamic because there's only about 500 residents and a lot more in the summer because all the Northerners come down.
Sure.
But they're police, fire, and EMS trained, all of them. So they kind of wear all the hats. But God, I forget what he said. But even on their website, on their recruiting, it was like a healthy workplace, or I forget the term, but it was front and center. You are the most important thing to us. And that's what we need to have. When you feel valued, we mentioned about organizational betrayal earlier, it's the opposite. We put on our uniform, we run come hell or high water. We go to the most horrendous stuff, we show up, and then a department turns their back on you. That absolutely is one of the unspoken reasons for suicide in our profession. Well, again, like I said with the other example, if the equal and opposite is going to be incredibly healing, and you're going to finally feel like that tribe and that brotherhood and sisterhood again, and that pride of wearing your particular badge on your chest. So investing in your workforce is absolutely paramount. If you look at the way Richard Branson runs Virgin, like I said, his focus is his people, because he says if your people are happy, the customer will be happy. And
we've all take care of the customers.
Yeah, we've all been in those places. I mean, I would say Walmart, for example. I love human beings, but it's rare that you go into Walmart and have a super chirpy, chippy, friendly person working there interacting, because I'm sure their ethos, their environment just doesn't nurture it.
On the other hand, go to Chick-fil-A.
I was going to say,
my pleasure.
Yeah, exactly. It might be a little forced,
right?
But the ethos is obviously, and even I would say like Starbucks. I love the fact that we're all tattooed and pierced, but over and above, they seem to like it. And then Publix, which is the supermarket chain here in Florida, they do it well. I mean, I've seen young people that go straight out of school or even while they're in school, and they stay there for years and years and years. So we got to look at these companies that are doing it right, and pick little parts from each. But yeah, feeling valued, feeling like you are a valuable part of the tribe, surpasses money. Because none of us, if I rephrase that, very few of us entered this job for the money. Like I was paid what a firefighter should be paid in Anaheim, California. That's the only time I've ever been paid. On the East Coast, I mean, it was a pittance, and you're working 56 hours, no Kelly, but we don't do it for that. We should be well paid, but our calling is to be part of something, be proud of being part of something, and then raising ourselves up to be the best version of firefighter, cop, whatever it is, so that we do serve people properly. So yeah, I think this is a revolution that we need, is investing in our people again.
So who are the people that need to hear this? Who are the decision makers? Is it the command staff in the fire departments, or is it the city leaders? Is it the elected officials, the state elected officials, the representatives, the senators? Who are those people that need to kind of hear this?
Yes, is my answer, because it's all of us. And this is why it's been such a hard change. But the good thing is it disarms everyone, because you're not blaming one group. Some of my biggest resistance comes from the firefighters, who we are literally trying to help. And it drives me up the wall. But they believe their own lies. They believe the propaganda so much. They believe that I'll sleep when I'm dead.
You've drank the Kool-Aid, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, they're drowning in the damn Kool-Aid. So you got to look in the mirror. And this is what I always tell people: take the focus off, the facade for a second. Why don't your family deserve to have you home as much as the bank manager and the checkout clerk and all these other people? You're letting these people tell you that you need to be away longer. And then when they're understaffed and mismanaged, even longer, and you got to make that phone call to your son or your daughter that you promised that you would do that thing the next day. And now you're breaking that promise for the 1,000th time. Why don't they deserve to have you home? So for us, we've got to stop telling this fairy tale, thinking that it makes you tough. It's not. It's pathetic. And, one of the biggest things I think that's really important for people to understand, the way that we work, it affects our children. There's a higher rate of everything from infertility, autism, Down syndrome, pediatric cancers. So we are passing this on to our kids. So if you truly care about your family, you need to become the number one advocate for your own health, so you can get back and make sure that they're okay. So that's at our level. At the chief level, I always tell people this, at your level, you can be one of two things. You can be the leader who was known to turn the ship around, that people will look at you and go, man, that chief was amazing. We used to work 56 hours a week, but now, obviously we don't. And we had all this overtime. Like we'd have to call people and say we couldn't go home. So you can be the person responsible for that, or you can be the one at the helm, the coward that just sinks with the ship. So you have a choice to be brave or a coward. It's that simple. And I'm not pulling any punches deliberately. But what's good is, again, you can go to your city or county and say, look, we're going to save you money. So I'm going to be a rock star for my firefighters. I'm going to be a rock star for the people above me. But you really, more than anyone, have got to be the storyteller. This is where we're at. This is how it's affecting negatively our delivery of service. This is what's happening to our firefighters. This is how long until we completely collapse and we lose the fire department, but we can turn it around. But we are going to need you to invest this first year so we can hire these extra people, so we can fix this. And then from a city and county, again, now you're talking about the taxpayer directly. Sure. Again, do you want to be the politician that was responsible for the collapse of the fire service? Do you want to be the one that everyone's pointing the finger to when that family dies because the fire engine crashed into a minivan on the way there because the freaking engineer had a micro sleep? You know what I mean? So every single level, it's about courage. Courage to advocate for yourself, courage to advocate for your people, courage to advocate for your community. So all of us have to do this. And if it's working in Florida, I know, because I'm getting phone calls from all over the country now. Hey, James, can you help me? How do we do this? And all I'm doing is passing on all this information that I've had from these experts in all these fields and then these departments that have made it happen. small, large, not extremely affluent, very affluent. I mean, all these different, so there's no excuse. And they're so, I want to give a shout out to these departments. All the people from these departments have done nothing but share how they did it. True brotherhood and sisterhood. So all it's down to now is the courage to say, enough is enough. It's not working. Florida, what are you doing? How can we make it work over here? Texas, California, Minnesota, wherever you're from.
Mm-hmm. How many more funerals we're going to go to?
It's literally to the point where I've said, look, if you're like here, Marion County, then don't show up to the funeral, chief. Like if you're refusing to fix this thing when departments around you are doing it, and then just to underline, the Florida State Fire College is in my town, in my county. So all these young people are coming out. They could be going straight into my community, the best, the cream of the crop. And instead, they're going everywhere else. No one wants to work here. And that's funny because I even had two guests from there recently. I asked them when they came on about 10 years ago, how hard was it to get hired? They said, oh, it was easy. They were hiring anyone. So for a decade, they've been that level. That you should be disgusted with yourself, because 10 years ago, most people were fighting for a job. It's really about, having the courage to advocate. And I lost my train of thought. I went off on one.
That's okay. Well, man, we've had some mic drop moments here. This has been awesome. And so what's one thing that firefighter that's sitting there in the bunk room listening to this, what's one thing he or she can do?
Start this conversation. I mean, both of those. So like I said, if we focus back into the mental health, the PTSD, it's having this conversation about understanding your formative years and what happened prior to the fire service, because you're not weak and you're not alone. Like I promise you, this is why I kind of underline this in both of my books. When you look across the dining room table and you see your engineer, like I did, that was, freaking 280 pounds, tattooed, shaved head. He looks fine. You look across, and there's your crusty 30-year fire captain. And then there's your partner who's, looks another way. They all look fine. But behind their mask, they're looking at you going, you look fine. So understand that we all have our things. So unpacking that first, if you're listening now, giving yourself the grace, because as I say, it's not excuses, it's reasons. So you're not saying, oh, poor me, I was in a house fire, and now I'm so delicate. But I'm like, but I was in a house fire. That had to have had an impact. We have to acknowledge that. So that's the big thing. And then, like I said, take a step back and ask yourself, why do you not deserve to work 40 hours a week? Because the person that makes your coffee, and I love coffee, shout out to all the baristas, they make coffee, they run their ass off, but then they go home and they sleep in their bed unless they're so caffeinated they can't sleep. We stay in a fire station away from our family, and you might be in a pseudo dead sleep, wake up, slide down the pole, get in the back of a tiller truck, navigate lights and sirens through traffic, come out, then you hear there's entrapment. Now you're climbing through, doing a primary search, pulling out a kid. The ambulance got delayed from a train. So now you're doffing your gear and trying to work out pediatric algorithms. And you don't deserve to have a 40-hour week. This is where we're disconnected. So look yourself in the mirror. Ask your family, what is more important to you? Because just to underline as well, there is not a wage cut with this. This is another myth. It would be the same as going to training. So you'd have the same salary. It's a smaller hour. And if you look at Europe, more and more corporations are realizing that a 4-day civilian work week is equally as productive as a 5. They just want the work done. So they're having a happier, healthier workforce in the corporate space. So the civilian work week is shrinking to 32 in the progressive companies. So ask your family, what is the most important thing to you? And I guarantee you they're going to say, you being here with us. So fight for that. I did a Q&A. I forget the number, but anyone can can message me and I'll send you that episode. And on that episode is the links to all the other departments that did it and some other places. There are answers to every one of the, that'll never work. That's absolute rubbish. The answer is in the 2472. So if no one else is talking about it, be that first person, because I get that first person on the phone all the time, and I got so much respect, because once you push that first domino and people start to understand the fairy tales that we've been living, your department will thank you, but most importantly, your husband, your wife, your partner, your children, they will thank you, because you will be there not only when you promised, but also even more often now. More karate events or band practice or whatever the thing is. When they look back, mom or dad were there when I needed them to be there. That to me is the ultimate currency.
Wow. That's great. And if you're a city leader, you certainly want your emergency responders to be healthy.
Yeah. And it's delivery of service. I mean, this all also pans out into performance. If
Absolutely.
you have a broken down, overworked, underslept workforce, they will make mistakes. They will be rude to people, when they've responded for the third time that night. You know what I mean? So our delivery of service will simply be better. And if you look at, I've had so many special ops, special forces soldiers on the show. They all hold us to their standard. You look at ocean lifeguards. You don't see a fat ocean lifeguard. You don't see one playing on their phone, because they're professionals. So if you invest in your firefighters, and we've already got phenomenal men and women, but you give them the environment that, for example, the special operations community gets, you will forge out a much higher level of performance. So for every firefighter that beats their chest and is like, it's for them, if you're not advocating for rest and recovery, you've missed the point completely, because you're underperforming. So this is the part of every single part. So the city and county leaders, you are doing this to increase the delivery of service for your people. And you as a county leader value your citizens so much that you're going to make your firefighters and your police officers the best of any city or county in the country.
Well, I think we're going to leave it at that. Well spoken, James. Thank you so much for your insight. Thank you for the work you're doing. I think you're doing some amazing work, and we're going to continue to push this forward as long and as far as we have to till we see change.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And for everyone listening that follows the Behind the Shield podcast, we need to get Conrad on. So we'll flip the microphone on him.
I'd love to. Where can people find you?
So the books, One More Light, Life, Death, and Humanity of a Firefighter is on Amazon, as is my second one, which is called Kinder, that just came out. That will be on Audible as well. The first one is, the second one I'm recording it now. And then the Behind the Shield podcast, you can find, anyway, just Google it. But yeah, it's on all the apps.
Well, James, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insight and your wisdom. I appreciate it very much.
Well, thank you. And thank you for making a film about the community that I love. It helps.
Absolutely. Thanks, James, for being on the show today. I really enjoyed our conversation. Be sure to check out James's new book, available on Amazon. I've put the links below in the show notes, and I've also linked to his podcast. So if you haven't listened to it, go check it out now. And please remember, you are not alone. And if you need someone to talk to and don't know where you can turn, you can always dial 988 for help. Until next time, be well, take care of yourself and those around you, and go out and do something great in the world.